Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints offense have their best practice of training camp thus far, by far. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to dive into training camp day 9, which was the biggest and best day for the New Orleans Saints offense by far. We're going to take a look at some news and notes, including some injury updates. Rashid Shaheed not available at practice. What is his expected return timeline, and much more. We're also going to take a look at Chris Olave and Alontae Taylor, who each had strong practices today as well. But we want to lead things off with Derek Carr, who had his best training camp practice thus far, and perhaps one of his best practices as a New Orleans Saint. Period. We appreciate you very much for being here for another episode and for making us your first listen of the day every day, and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends at FanDuel, where they're making every moment more right now all summer long. FanDuel is handing out free boost and bonuses. That means that there's something for everyone every day all summer long over at FanDuel.com. That's where you're going to want to go to get started. So, New Orleans Saints quarterback Derek Carr had his best training camp practice thus far, and perhaps one of his best practices that media has been able to see during his entire stint here so far as well. He was absolutely on point. He was effective. He was getting in and out of the huddle, not even just the big plays, but he was making the short plays, the quick passes, the slants, things like that were all on time. Just a really, really good day for Derek Carr. And it started early when he completed 4 of his 5 passes during 7-on-7s. But I want to jump right to the point at which his day became a big day. And it was a play-action pass down the right sideline to Chris Olave, who had beaten 2 receivers in coverage to get open. It was a 55-yard absolute bomb down the field. An outstanding play and a really, really good connection between he and Chris Olave, who would go on to connect about another 3 or 4 times during this practice. Olave was covered by both Paulson and Debo off the line, and then also had the safety help of Roderick Teamer over the top, but it didn't matter. Chris Olave managed to get behind the defense entirely, and Derek Carr put the ball exactly where it needed to be. Beautiful pass. Chris Olave did not need to break stride. He did not have to come back for the football, anything like that. Just a well-placed, well-timed ball between Derek Carr and Chris Olave, whose connection we continue to watch burgeon. Okay, really, really good stuff there. That didn't stop it, though. That wasn't the end. Derek Carr then, a couple of plays later, ended up connecting with Alvin Kamara in the end zone for a 25-yard touchdown, or a 25-plus yard touchdown out of a slot fade. Yeah, you heard that right. Alvin Kamara ran a route not out of the backfield, but they actually lined him up in the slot, had him run a fade out of the slot, and then ended up being able to hit him over the top. No problem. No problem at all. Well executed. Again, well placed, well timed. The route was well run. Everything that was necessary, everything that was needed was there. Derek Carr then, at a later point, had another touchdown pass to Chris Olave, this time in red zone drills. It was a quick and easy sprint out. So a sprint out is when the quarterback snaps the ball and then runs, right? Just runs in a direction, not back, but runs in a direction, either left or right, depending on the handedness usually of that quarterback. And the pocket just kind of moves with them. It's a way to alleviate some pressure off of your quarterback, get the pocket moving, all these other things. So they run a sprint out. Boom. Chris Olave is running a route to the same area that Derek Carr is running out to. Hit him on the side. Bam. Easy touchdown in the red zone. Really, really nice stuff. Chris Olave was all by himself. The route that he ran was really nice. Chris ran a really nice route earlier too, but we'll dive into that here in just a moment. Finally, the last thing that I thought put like the little cherry on top for Derek Carr's day was the sort of read option, zone read that he ran. He takes a snap, starts the handoff to the running back, has a quick key read before he does the handoff. If he sees the entire defense crash inside, Dennis Allen explained it's simple. You see that, you keep the ball, and then you run to the outside. That's what he did. Ran around to the outside, scored a touchdown on a big keeper that swept over to the left side of the offensive line. On a day when the offense and defense talked so much trash to one another. Just boundless amounts of trash talk all throughout. And Derek Carr says, you know what? I'm going to go get me one. And he ran for a touchdown. Dennis Allen spoke about it after practice, that's a play that, of course, they're going to have in their ledger. They tried to run a little bit of it last year. They ran one of those. I believe it was against the Falcons at home in the final game of the year. They ran sort of this keeper for Derek Carr. In fact, I asked Derek Carr about it, and the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, you saw that?" It's like, yeah, I did see that, but I love the joy of that moment. But it was a play that also educated the New Orleans Saints defense and the New Orleans Saints defensive coaches that, hey, they have to get better at defending those keepers and things like that. Because although Derek Carr is probably more athletic than people give him credit for, he's not a dual threat quarterback. He's not an athletic quarterback to that level or that extent to where you're going to be game planning that a ton. So if the Saints defense struggled to stop him from doing it, they have to be ready for all the other guys that can do it, like the Josh Allens of the world, the Jalen Hurts, the CJ Strouds, all of that. So what it said to Dennis Allen was, we got to get better at defending that. So a little bit of education for that New Orleans Saints defense on that play as well. So I thought it was a great day by Derek Carr. I should say that the ball placement on each one of these throws that I've highlighted was outstanding as well. Led the receiver, allowed it to just kind of be able to drop in the bucket, absolute dimes. So really, really good stuff. He's clearly become very comfortable with the system. Let's see if the momentum continues to go or if the defense closes the gap again. I'm sure the defense will continue to have really strong days. This was not the strongest day for the defense. It was an outstanding day for the offense, however. And that was refreshing. That was good to see because this gives us a little bit of the punch and punch back that you look for in training camp, as opposed to what was beginning to feel like a little bit of a one-sided affair for the New Orleans Saints defense. So really, really nice stuff today in what was easily Derek Carr's best practice of training camp. What are you hoping to see the team build off from this? Well, continuing to add some of these concepts that they've been running. They've been running some really interesting stuff here. We're seeing fake pitches, or we're seeing fake jet sweeps to pitches. We saw one where they motioned two different guys from the left side of the formation to the right side of the formation and then ran to the left. So they overstacked over on the right, or overstacked over on the left, adjusted so that they were heavy on the right, and then ran to the left. All these other things. There's just a lot of these little wrinkles and innovations that are being built into the offense. And clearly Derek Carr has been pretty comfortable with all of them. And if nothing else, the one thing Derek Carr is always going to be very comfortable with, it's the deep ball. And we're still seeing the deep ball from Derek Carr bring in some big opportunities here, as well as, how much they've been working on the red zone, the emphasis on the red zone, all of those other things. So really, really good stuff here from Derek Carr in what was his best practice, perhaps as a Saint, but certainly his best practice of training camp thus far. Coming up next, I want to tell you about Chris Olave's day a little bit more in detail. And I want to tell you about Alontae Taylor's day, because while Derek Carr had a fantastic day, Alontae Taylor made sure he got his. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula that helps you win championships, but it's also the same formula that helps you keep your number one ride or die alive. If you're looking to level your car up to peak performance, eBay Motors has everything that you need. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, exhaust kits, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for at ebaymotors.com. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, that part is guaranteed to fit every time or your money back, because the eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. For all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, make sure you go and check out ebaymotors.com, who are going to help you level your car up to MVP performance and start bringing home those big wins. Keep your ride or die alive today over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And eBay guarantee fit available only to U.S. customers. All right, family. It was also a huge day for New Orleans Saints wide receiver Chris Olave. I keep rhyming and I keep having these bars, and eventually I'm going to be ready to take on Kendrick. You just wait. You just wait. The New Orleans Saints wide receiver Chris Olave had a fantastic day today. Was targeted several passes, ended up having some big catches over the middle, big play action catch over the middle from Derek Carr. Had a fantastic play on some really, really nice route running, really, really nuanced footwork, effective footwork on a fantastic, very well-placed pass from Jake Haener, who I thought had a nice camp day today. Just a lot of good stuff from Chris Olave. And this version of Chris Olave doesn't end with the production on the field, but yet is exactly what the New Orleans Saints need from him in 2024. We appreciate you very much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day. Don't forget, we are here with you every day. So if this is your first time checking out the show, we'll be here every single day. In fact, there'll be another episode fresh tomorrow morning, and then we'll be live again after Sunday's practice, as the Saints will continue to practice Sunday and Monday before taking a day off. Make sure you also go check out the new Locked On NFL 24/7 stream, bringing you all the big stories from around the National Football League, 24/7 from the local experts that know the teams the best. Find it over on the Locked On NFL YouTube page and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app as well. So Chris Olave had an excellent day today. And it kind of all started in one-on-ones. A couple of big moments for him during one-on-ones. He had a touchdown on a slant from Jake Haener with Paulson Adebo in coverage. He then came back around for another touchdown. I believe this throw was by Derek Carr. This one was with Paulson Adebo in coverage as well. Kind of caught a touchdown over at the near pylon. Ended up having another one thrown his way during one-on-ones. Did not come up with the catch. However, with referees still here in Irvine, who are expected to be here through the weekend, there was a DPI, defensive pass interference, that was called on Paulson Adebo. So I would give Chris Olave, again, 3 of 3 on his one-on-one reps. Then he ended up getting a nice day out of the 7-on-7s as well, where he ended up making a few big catches there. He had a quick out. He also had another catch from Jake Haener on a beautifully located pass. This was probably one of my favorite ones, and this is really where Chris Olave's day started, because he actually ran the 7-on-7s before they did the one-on-ones, interestingly enough. But Chris Olave lines up towards the outside. He draws the coverage of Rajon Wright, undrafted free agent cornerback. He ends up pushing upfield, moving towards the sideline, getting Wright to commit to that, and then pushing back upfield to the back pylon. And Jake Haener just placed an absolute beauty of a ball. I mean, just absolutely dropped it in the bucket for Chris Olave in the back corner of the end zone, who caught it, toe tap, boom, touchdown. It was excellent. And that was really the moment that kind of started Chris Olave's day. Then when he got into team drills, he went off. Play action crosser on a great ball from Derek Carr. The big touchdown down the field that we talked about earlier, play action bomb, 55 yards. That was Chris Olave as well, of course. We saw Chris Olave then again come back around in the second team drills, connect on another one from Derek Carr with Paulson Adebo in coverage. So the reason why I'm highlighting Paulson Adebo in coverage here is because Chris Olave is doing this with who is right now the Saints' top corner, with Marshawn Lattimore being out. That's the guy that he's drawing the coverage of. So he's fighting through the most physical, one of the strongest, this big cornerback for the New Orleans Saints. And he's getting all of these plays in and making all of these plays in the meanwhile. He then came back in red zone drills with that sprint out touchdown from Derek Carr, got his hands on another one, or almost got his hands on another one. Derek Carr was looking for him in the end zone, but Brian Brzee, who again was back out there today, ended up knocking the ball down at the line of scrimmage. He was in there while Nathan Shepard was out, which I'll explain here in a little bit. But so I highlight those plays to kind of show you that Chris Olave was impacting the game, whether it was Derek Carr throwing to him, or Jake Haener throwing to him, whether he was running a big route down the right sideline, or whether he was attacking the middle of the field, or if it was in the red zone. This is exactly what the New Orleans Saints need from Chris Olave. They need him to be able to be a threat at every single area of the field. And whether that is in the short and intermediate area while your team is, between the 20s, whether that's in the red zone in the short area, but also getting towards the outside. They've also been utilizing him in terms of end arounds and jet sweeps and all these other things. This is it. this is what you want to see from Chris Olave, who has no reason not to be an all-pro wide receiver in 2024. In fact, Alontae Taylor told him that. There's no reason that you shouldn't be a Pro Bowler, no reason that you shouldn't be an all-pro. And now those two are working very hard to push one another and challenge each other to make each other better. So really, really excellent stuff from Chris Olave today. The other thing, too, beyond all that, I said that there was stuff about Chris Olave that kind of says who he is this year in terms of the change of mentality that wasn't about the production on the field. And a big part of it is Chris Olave is talking a lot of trash, like a lot of trash. And therefore, he gets the Locked On Saints Dog of the Day award today. Little applause for him. It is exactly what the Saints need to not only have a guy like Chris Olave who can make plays at all three levels of the field and in every area of the game and all these different situations, game situations, stuff like that, but it is also the version of Chris Olave that the New Orleans Saints need that will go out there and get into the mind of an opposing defense, that will sit there and talk trash and talk smack and be the quote-unquote alpha dog when out on the field. So often, that is the criticism of Chris Olave. The two criticisms of Chris Olave have always been not sure that he's an alpha, and then the yards after catch thing. Those are always the two biggest things. Chris Olave is going to continue to talk. He's going to continue to make people mad. And I think that that is a part of the alpha dog mentality that people are looking for from him. And I love seeing it here in practice. And in fact, we're seeing it on both sides of the football. Like, quick vibe check. The offense and defense feel like they hate each other when they're on the field. Like, the competition is crazy. They're yelling at one another. They're shouting at one another. They're insulting one another. They're talking about, don't bring that weak beep beep. Like, don't bring all this. Don't bring all that. Like, we don't want to hear about it. Can't even celebrate that. Blah, 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 blah. All this stuff. They're constantly going at each other. And it's just the nature of the competitive level of training camp. This training camp, without a shadow of a doubt for me, this training camp is way more competitive for anything that I've seen in a New Orleans Saints training camp in recent years. This is very, very different. And Chris Olave has become a big part of that. Another guy that's become a big part of that is cornerback Alontae Taylor. In fact, Chris Olave and Alontae Taylor went back and forth quite a bit just a few days ago. But Alontae Taylor made sure that Derek Carr at least finished with a little bit of a blemish on his record. And he did so to the tune of what would have been a big time score stealing interception in the end zone, and might have even been a 14-point swing, erasing those 7 points and then getting another 7 on his way back with a big pick six. It would have been a huge play. And I didn't knock Derek Carr's day about it because I don't think Derek Carr's throw was bad. It was just an outstanding play by Alontae Taylor. Here's what happened. Derek Carr takes a snap, drops back. He looks around, looks to the back left corner of the end zone. Stanley Morgan Jr. is running towards that way. There's area there to get the ball. Derek Carr lifts the ball, gets it over there. Not a bad pass at all. Would have made it to Stanley Morgan Jr. I have no complaints about the pass. Alontae Taylor, however, skied up so high to get up and get this interception. It was remarkable. Him and Paul Sadibo were both in the area. Alontae Taylor made this incredible leaping interception where he went up, snagged it, came back down, and then kind of stopped. And then you could hear the defensive coaching staff yelling, "Now go score a touchdown. Go score a touchdown." And then he started sprinting down that right sideline. Big shout out to Taliesin Fuanga, who might have actually caught him. Big shout out to Jordan Mims for never giving up on it. Might have actually caught him as well. So no matter what, Alontae Taylor would have gotten a big return off of that, no doubt. But I loved the competitive nature of the defensive coaching staff saying, don't just get the interception. Go get yourself a touchdown. And then had him go and return it. I loved seeing that. I thought that was really, really good stuff from this New Orleans Saints coaching staff. Really, really good stuff from Alontae Taylor, who has had a spectacular camp thus far. And again, I don't completely hold this against Derek Carr where I would say that all of a sudden his day wasn't good. It was just a fantastic individual effort by Alontae Taylor, who made a spectacular play. Coming up next, let's dive into some of our news and notes. Rashid Shaheed not here at practice today. What is the expected return timeline for him? Believe it or not, we actually have one. We got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, as well as our official sports betting partners here on the Locked On Podcast Network. They've got everything that you need from the MLB to Olympics. They've got auto racing, boxing, tennis, golf. They've got so much stuff that you can get in on, making sure that the sports never stop sporting all summer long. And right now, they're making it even more fun over at FanDuel throughout the summer, because every day they're giving out a free boost or bonus to all customers. That means that there's something for everyone every day, all summer long, over at FanDuel. You can even get in on early NFL props. You can get in on win-loss totals. You can bet on the New Orleans Saints on their spread to open the season up against the Carolina Panthers, opening as 4.5-point favorites currently. Over-under set at 40.5. You think they can outscore that? You think they'll come in under? You think the Saints will beat that spread? You think that they'll lose that spread? You can go and check all that out and much more over at FanDuel.com. That's where you're going to want to go to get your summer started. It's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Rashid Shaheed missed practice today, but the expectation and the hope is that he'll be back very, very soon. We appreciate you very much for being here and hanging out with us for another live episode of Locked On Saints following practices here. And of course, all of you who are catching the show later as well, we appreciate you very much. We'll have another show for you. We are your team every day tomorrow morning. As we take a look, I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the things that we saw from the Saints offense, a couple of core principle things that we're starting to pick up on that we're seeing the Saints do that I think are a lot of fun, and speak a little bit more to the innovation of what this New Orleans Saints coaching staff is bringing to the offensive side of the football. So we'll dive into that in tomorrow's episode. And then we'll be live again around this same time tomorrow after the Saints wrap up their next practice, which is no longer a padded practice. So the Saints' next two practices will be out of pads. They just had their last of 5 padded practices. For now, they've got 7 total throughout the rest of training camp. So they'll get back into pads pretty soon after the next day off, which is after Tuesday. All right, so Rashid Shaheed was not at practice today due to hamstring tightness, is what Dennis Allen called it. Dennis Allen also went so far as to say and express that this was pretty precautionary to not have Rashid Shaheed out there with this hamstring tightness. Didn't call it a hamstring injury, didn't call it an issue, anything like that, just said hamstring tightness. That was it. So they figured that they shouldn't push it and that they would give him the day, rest, have the day off as a precaution, and then the hope for the Saints is that he will be back tomorrow on Sunday. So we'll be keeping an eye out for number 22 to be back out there. Rashid Shaheed has had a very, very good camp. You might not have heard about it because he's kind of doing all the things that you expect him to do, but he has had a fantastic camp and has been an absolute champion when it comes to one-on-ones. I think it's one of the reasons that you saw, and I know Jeff Nowak was talking about this over at Inside the Black and Gold. You just taking it to Paul Debo constantly, and we think that this is why Alontae Taylor said on the podium the other day, "Hey, I need to draw. I've been battling back and forth with Chris Olave trying to make each other better, but I need me some Shaheed snaps." Well, this might be why, because during those one-on-ones, Rashid Shaheed has been absolutely unstoppable. So, the expectation is that he'll be back. The expectation is that he'll be back tomorrow. We'll see if that's the case. If not, we'll look for him to be back on Monday, but it doesn't seem like this one is as big of a deal right now. That doesn't seem like it's a big issue at this time. So it's hamstring tightness that kept Rashid Shaheed out. Now, with Rashid Shaheed being out today, half of his number, 22 down to 11, was back. Cedrick Wilson was back today, had a couple of nice catches and things like that, resumed kind of being third in the lineup, although Mason Tipton kind of mixed in with the first team as well. So it was good to see Cedrick Wilson kind of move right back into his spot with Rashid Shaheed out. And I think that, like, Chris Olave having such a big day with Rashid Shaheed out again, like another reason why he deserved that Dog of the Day nomination. The Saints brought in 2 new tight ends today, Kevin Rader as well as Mason Fairchild. They ended up making both of those moves because they moved on from Jesper Horsted, who they had signed before training camp began, former Raiders tight end. Jermaine Jackson, the undrafted free agent wide receiver, was waived injured, so he'll probably clear waivers and revert to the Saints injured reserve list. He ended up leaving practice yesterday with an injury and then was already moved on from. This is exactly what happened with Tommy Hudson, the Saints tight end. He ended up leaving practice with an injury, ended up waived reserve by the end of the day or by the end of the next day, and then is now back on injured reserve because no one claimed him off of waivers. So when you're waived injured and you're a non-invested player, you revert to injured reserve of the team that you're a part of. Along with all of that, I wanted to also mention some other news and notes for you today. I don't have that the Saints defensive line had a bad day. I do have, though, that the Saints defensive line didn't run amok as much as they typically have over the course of the past couple of days. I thought the New Orleans Saints offensive line actually looked pretty promising today. Taliese Fuanga with some really nice pass reps. Trevor Penning had a couple of really good confidence building reps as well. There was good protection. There were actually a couple of times where I heard after a team rep, the quarterback or someone on the offensive coaching staff shout, great protection, good job, all those other things. So a lot of attaboys over to the offensive line. I thought that they looked pretty good today. It was the most promising offensive day I think I've seen so far here for camp, and most promising one for the offensive line. We saw Eric McCoy back in at center. We saw Lucas Patrick starting over at left guard, but then we've also watched guys like Landon Young, as well as Shane Lemieux, who made his return to team drills today, and Ali Udoh all play at left guard as well. Most of the other positions were pretty stout in terms of what you would expect them to be when it comes to first team offensive line. So really, really nice stuff, and a bit of a promising day from the offensive line. Now let's see if they'll be able to pick that back up when they get back to padded drills or padded practices later on in training camp. So still want to just see them bridge the gap a little bit. You know what I mean? Not trying to be harsh here, but seeing it good, seeing it again better. That's all that I mean. We saw another Taysom Hill under center play today. We saw him take a sweep to the left. Didn't end up getting in the end zone. It was from the 5-yard line, I believe, and it was on a red zone drill. The Saints defense closed on it very, very quickly. So really good job there. Covered that a lot better than they covered that read option or zone read that the keeper for Derek Carr. But I think you'll give him those. Derek Foster incorporated another interesting drill today. So we've now seen him using the slip covers, the silk slip covers on the footballs to simulate a wet ball, the weighted footballs to force greater grip strength. We see a diagram on the ground that kind of shows you all of your trap angles and all these other things. And then today they had a football, and in the nose of the football, on one end of the football, there was a black string, rope really, that ran probably about 6 foot, and it had a handle over on the other side, so that the running back could hold the football the way that they would when they would typically run, and then there could be someone behind them literally trying to yank the football from 6 feet away behind them because the string attached to the nose was attached to a handle that they were tugging on as the running back was jogging down the field. I love this drill because it's another ball carry drill. It's another ball security drill that I think is really important. We've seen a lot more fumbles from the Saints team over the course of the past few years. We've heard a lot of fumbles referenced when it comes to the accountability question marks and all those other things. So great to see Derek Foster coming in with all of these sort of ball security drills and making sure like, hey, when you have this in your hand, it better not come out. You better not lose control of this. So I really, really like seeing that from them as well. Give you a couple of special teams things. Blake Grupe missed 3 kicks today. He is now 33 of 38, all throughout camp, while Charlie Smith is 22 of 27. The 3 kicks that Blake Grupe missed today, one was from about 39, and then 2 were from 59. So Blake Grupe still having trouble hitting some kicks at 50 plus. He's had some big issues there, but I think that was the only kick that he's missed so far within 50 throughout training camp here as well. So really, really nice stuff from him. No, I was going to say really, really nice stuff from him. Not really, really nice stuff from him. He missed 3 field goals. Let's be real. All right. Saints spent a lot more time as well in red zone. Really like that. Lots of big plays from this team. And I think that there's no reason that Chris Olave shouldn't be an all-pro this offseason. He looks really, really good. Or this coming season, he looks really, really good. So, yeah, a really, really fantastic day for the New Orleans Saints offense. Let's see if they can build off of it. They'll be back at it tomorrow with more. The pads come off, so the physicality will ramp down. But that doesn't mean that the practices aren't any more important to win over on that side of the football. So expect some more good stuff coming up tomorrow. I see we got some questions in the chat. I'll go back through those and then I'll have them answered for you in tomorrow morning's episode. We're also going to dive into some of the fun things we have seen from this innovative new offense. So we're going to dive into all that tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you then. And I appreciate you very much for making us your first listen of the day. For the second listen, make sure you go and check out Locked On Fantasy Football. It's almost time for your fantasy football drafts. I know it is. Vinny Iyer, Michelle Majuk, some of the greatest minds when it comes to fantasy football. Go and check them out every Monday through Friday, 30 minutes of fantasy football advice. Go and check them out on your favorite podcast provider and on YouTube. We appreciate you very much. As always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day, and for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you find me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.